On the afternoon of September 30th, 2013, unmarked vehicles sat quietly outside a warehouse near Fairvilla Road in Orlando while investigators waited beside a freight container carrying thousands of pounds of marijuana. The workers unloading the shipment kept checking their phones nervously until a black Land Rover rolled slowly into the lot, and everybody around the warehouse started moving differently once the woman stepped outside. When agents finally moved in, they recovered burner phones, ledgers, cash records, ammunition, plus documents carrying multiple identities connected to the same person. Inside another property, investigators uncovered passports, social security cards, warehouse paperwork, and traces of a trafficking operation stretching across Central Florida. That was Charmaine Roman on the day everything collapsed. But years earlier, she looked like somebody's favorite grandma from Dr. Phillips. Central Village made her long before detectives in Orlando started pulling apart warehouse operations tied to marijuana shipments. Charmaine Roman was growing up inside Central Village, St. Catherine Parish, where political violence, hustling culture, migration dreams, plus neighborhood survival all blended together naturally. During the late 1970s through the mid-80s, parts of St. Catherine became rough territory where weak policing left local crews controlling entire streets after dark, while shootings connected to gang feuds turned regular neighborhoods into pressure zones. Older residents remembered hearing about Klansmen affiliates moving through nearby communities alongside politically connected gunmen who treated loyalty almost like currency, which meant younger people learned quickly that protection usually came through relationships instead of institutions. Those conditions shaped countless Jamaican families before migration waves carried many towards South Florida, although the same movement also created underground pipelines connecting Kingston, Miami, Orlando, Miramar, Fort Lauderdale, plus New York through relatives, traffickers, promoters, hustlers, couriers, nightclub workers, and political fixers. Around that same period, Jamaican posses started building serious weight across American cities after groups like the Shower Posse expanded their trafficking routes beyond Kingston neighborhoods into larger drug markets throughout the United States. Men connected to Tivoli Gardens carried stories about Jim Brown Coke, then later Christopher Dudas Coke, whose reputation traveled through Caribbean communities long before American television networks started discussing him publicly. Another faction known as the Spangler Posse developed rival influence tied to different political loyalties inside Jamaica, although both organizations benefited from migration patterns carrying Jamaicans directly into growing American cities. By the late 1980s, Florida had already become a major corridor, linking Caribbean trafficking circles with Mexican suppliers, local distributors, freight operators, plus nightclub economies moving large amounts of cash quietly every weekend. That environment mattered later for Charmaine Roman, although she did not arrive in America as some established underworld figure carrying immediate authority across Florida streets. Instead, her early years inside the United States looked similar to many Jamaican immigrants trying to stabilize themselves after arriving during difficult economic years. She worked hotel jobs around Central Florida while sending money back home regularly, then slowly learned how Orlando's Jamaican communities operated through churches, dance events, Caribbean restaurants, family gatherings, plus entertainment circles. During those years, she also crossed paths with Wayne St. Clair Reed alongside Mark Reed, who sometimes moved under the name Terrence Turb, depending on who was asking questions. Reed already carried a reputation among certain Jamaicans as somebody connected to larger hustling circles moving between Florida plus Jamaica, while Reed handled himself more quietly around logistics, transportation, and financial arrangements. Their relationship with Charmaine mattered later since their operation never depended entirely on rigid hierarchy, while trust between people who shared migration history often carried more value than titles. Inside many Caribbean trafficking circles during the 1990s, women frequently controlled financial movement quietly, while men attracted police attention through visible violence, flashy behavior, or reckless street activity around clubs and stash spots. Older women in particular moved differently because officers rarely viewed grandmothers as operational figures, coordinating transportation routes, counting money, or organizing deliveries through coded conversations. Charmaine learned quickly that staying calm around chaos made people underestimate her naturally, while loud personalities usually pulled surveillance toward themselves first. Around Orlando's Jamaican nightlife scene, she started building credibility through entertainment promotion after realizing Caribbean events generated heavy cash flow without creating immediate suspicion from outsiders. That hustle eventually became sure-thing investments, which looked legitimate enough publicly while helping her establish relationships across clubs. venues, artists, DJs, drivers, promoters, plus neighborhood fixers throughout Central Florida. At first, those entertainment circles mostly revolved around reggae shows, dance hall parties, sound clashes, food events, after parties, and Caribbean celebrations, attracting hundreds of immigrants searching for pieces of home after leaving Jamaica years earlier. Charmaine understood those rooms deeply since she knew how Caribbean crowds moved, how artists expected cash payments backstage, how promoters avoided paperwork regularly, plus how large amounts of money circulated quickly through nightlife culture. During the weekends around Orlando, Pine Hills, Ocoee, plus nearby neighborhoods, it became common to see DJs, truck drivers, hustlers, couriers, dancers, and businessmen sharing the same spaces without asking many questions about each other's income. Some people moved liquor, some moved concert equipment, some moved furniture through warehouses, while others quietly shifted marijuana through those same overlapping relationships. That overlap mattered heavily later because trafficking operations rarely appeared suddenly out of nowhere, while underground economies usually grew slowly beside legitimate businesses until both worlds became impossible to separate cleanly. While Charmaine developed her entertainment presence publicly, larger trafficking systems connecting Jamaica, Mexico, Texas, plus Florida were becoming increasingly sophisticated during the late 1990s into the early 2000s. Recreational vehicles started moving marijuana through long interstate routes. Freight shipments became more common. Stash houses expanded quietly across Orlando neighborhoods. Plus, couriers learned how to avoid attracting unnecessary police attention during transport runs. Wayne St. Clair Reed strengthened connections with suppliers, while Mark Reed focused heavily on logistics. Though investigators later believed Charmaine handled the organization better than almost anybody around them. Associates remembered her staying composed during stressful situations, while younger workers panicked around deliveries, delayed shipments, missing money, or suspicious vehicles parked near warehouses. That calm reputation slowly increased her importance inside those circles, since people trusted her judgment when an expensive product started moving through Central Florida regularly. At the same time, migration culture kept feeding the network naturally because new arrivals from Jamaica often depended heavily on informal connections while trying to survive expensive American cities without stable opportunities waiting immediately. Some immigrants worked in hotels near International Drive, others drove trucks across states, while several bounced between warehouse labor, nightlife security, construction jobs, plus transportation gigs barely covering expenses. Those struggles created recruitment pools for organizations needing drivers, couriers, stash house caretakers, or people willing to store packages temporarily without asking many questions. Charmaine moved comfortably through those environments while presenting herself publicly as a hardworking grandmother handling business opportunities through Caribbean entertainment. Neighbors mostly saw cookouts, family gatherings, lottery tickets, plus a woman connected deeply inside Orlando's Jamaican social scene. Although investigators later believed the lines separating ordinary hustling from organized trafficking had already disappeared around her years earlier without anybody noticing immediately. By the early 2000s, Charmaine Roman was no longer moving small packages through trusted relatives quietly, since the operation around Orlando had already started stretching across counties through drivers, couriers, warehouses, plus stash locations tied together carefully. Pine Hills became one important zone around that period because Jamaican families, Caribbean businesses, truck routes, plus nightlife traffic blended naturally there without outsiders paying close attention regularly. Smaller marijuana runs that once traveled through personal vehicles started evolving into larger coordinated shipments involving freight companies, long-haul transport, recreational vehicles, plus storage spaces rented under different names around Orange County. Wayne St. Clair Reed focused heavily on supplier relationships linked to Texas, Mexico, plus Florida transportation circles, while Mark Reed handled logistics carefully through phone calls, drop locations, route schedules, plus payment systems moving cash across multiple hands quietly. Charmaine stayed close to the organizational side, while younger dudes took visible risks moving product physically. Although investigators later realized she probably understood the operation better than most people carrying the marijuana directly. At the center of that system sat several stash houses spread across Orlando's west side, where workers unpacked compressed marijuana before redistributing smaller amounts throughout Central Florida neighborhoods connected through Jamaican social circles. Some locations look completely ordinary from outside, although inside those homes, people stacked duffel bags beside detergent boxes, food containers, spare furniture, plus vacuum-sealed packages sprayed heavily to block odors from drug dogs. Couriers rarely stayed inside one location too long because routes shifted constantly through Ocoee, Pine Hills, Fairvilla Road, plus nearby industrial areas where commercial traffic helped movements blend naturally into everyday activity. Disposable phones became critical around that period since workers communicated using coded language involving tickets, food, parties, plus numbered routes that referred to specific delivery systems without mentioning marijuana directly. Route 6 usually referred to RV shipments arriving from Texas, while Route 7 pointed toward freight deliveries, although conversations stayed deliberately vague whenever somebody sounded nervous during calls. That structure pulled multiple people into Charmaine's orbit slowly, including women like Afri Chang, who publicly worked regular jobs while privately helping manage safe houses connected to incoming shipments around Orlando. Chang reportedly balanced nursing work with stash house responsibilities during certain stretches, which made her useful because nobody expected someone wearing scrubs to coordinate marijuana storage locations quietly after work shifts. Courtney Hutchinson entered the picture differently since he carried himself like an ambitious younger hustler wanting fast money, although older people around the operation believed his mouth stayed too reckless during conversations. Charmaine still trusted him around certain deliveries because younger workers handled physical transportation better than older associates, attracting attention repeatedly near warehouses. That trust mattered later after investigators started tracing movement patterns linked to deliveries, phone records, plus drivers operating around Fairvilla Road while marijuana shipments kept growing larger every few months. The transportation methods also changed heavily once the organization started using recreational vehicles disguised as ordinary tour buses, carrying legitimate equipment through interstate highways connecting Texas, Florida, plus other southern states. Mukesh Rampersad and Shamila Rampersad became useful around that phase because their transportation background gave them believable reasons for traveling long distances repeatedly without raising immediate suspicion from officers. Investigators later discovered hidden compartments beneath sleeping areas, inside storage spaces, plus behind modified walls where marijuana bundles sat tightly wrapped during cross-country drives toward Orlando distribution sites. Workers unloaded those shipments through furniture warehouses or industrial storage units, where forklifts, moving trucks, plus commercial deliveries created enough noise to hide illegal activity naturally among regular business operations. Some drivers believed they were transporting concert equipment connected to Caribbean events, although others clearly understood the routes involved much heavier work than ordinary entertainment logistics. That overlap between nightlife culture plus trafficking became one reason Charmaine's operation survived for years without collapsing early under police pressure around Central Florida. Reggae promoters moved large amounts of cash regularly. Artists preferred getting paid directly after performances. Plus, nightclub relationships created transportation opportunities involving buses, hotels, warehouses, security teams, drivers, equipment handlers, and after-party organizers. Charmaine understood those spaces perfectly after years inside Orlando's Jamaican entertainment scene. While younger street guys often lacked patience organizing complicated systems requiring discipline across multiple cities simultaneously. During dance hall events, she could discuss artist bookings publicly, while separate conversations nearby focused quietly on deliveries, money transfers, or shipment arrivals scheduled through coded language. That balance helped her maintain the image of a grandmother promoting Caribbean culture, while freight containers, stash houses, plus couriers operated around her almost invisibly through trusted relationships. Her sons gradually became part of that world too, after growing up around conversations involving transportation, warehouses, concert planning, plus unexplained cash moving constantly through family spaces. Investigators later listened to recorded calls where Charmaine warned younger relatives about careless phone conversations, suspicious vehicles, plus unnecessary attention around stash locations holding expensive products. Sometimes she sounded protective during those exchanges while reminding them that police monitored communications heavily, although other moments revealed a colder side whenever shipments disappeared or money arrived short unexpectedly. Associates later described her as somebody capable of switching personalities quickly depending on the pressure surrounding deliveries, which made people respect her organizational ability even when tensions started building internally. Wayne Reed reportedly trusted her judgment deeply during operational disputes because she handled movement, scheduling, plus financial coordination better than emotional street figures reacting impulsively under stress. Florida's marijuana economy kept expanding during the late 2000s, while organizations connected to Mexican suppliers started flooding southern states with larger quantities, requiring sophisticated distribution systems. Charmaine's network adapted fast through warehouses, hidden compartments, burner phones, coordinated couriers, money transfers, plus immigrant relationships stretching between Jamaica, Texas, Florida, Canada, plus Mexico simultaneously. Workers around the organization no longer viewed themselves as corner hustlers moving small neighborhood packages because shipments now involved thousands of pounds traveling across state lines through commercial transportation systems. That shift changed the danger level completely once stash houses started attracting robbery risks, rival attention, plus heavier surveillance from federal agencies tracking larger trafficking corridors around Orlando. By 2013, investigators believed the operation had evolved far beyond local street dealing, while Charmaine Roman quietly became one of the most important organizers, holding the entire structure together behind closed doors. By January 2009, Charmaine Roman had already built enough of a quiet reputation around Central Florida that people inside certain circles started believing large amounts of cash stayed inside her Claremont home regularly. That reputation turned dangerous one night after Charmaine, alongside her daughters, sat inside the house watching television while three armed men suddenly forced their way through the property carrying guns, plus zip ties. The intruders moved aggressively through the rooms while demanding money connected to one of Charmaine's recent lottery wins. Her daughters later described terrifying moments where the men tied everybody up while repeatedly threatening violence. Investigators initially viewed the attack like a brutal home invasion targeting a lucky lottery winner, although people around Orlando's Jamaican underground started whispering different theories almost immediately afterward. Some believed random criminals simply targeted Charmaine after hearing she won thousands through Florida scratch-off tickets, while others suspected the robbery was connected directly to trafficking money hidden somewhere inside the residence. Another rumor spreading around Pine Hills suggested insiders connected to the marijuana network leaked information about possible cash stashes after disagreements involving shipments or missing money. Those theories mattered later because the robbery exposed something Charmaine spent years trying to balance carefully, which involved living publicly like a hardworking grandmother while privately operating around increasingly dangerous people. During police interviews after the invasion, Charmaine presented herself like a frightened mother, protecting her daughters from violent criminals searching for lottery cash. Although investigators later realized she already carried connections to larger trafficking activity stretching across Central Florida. Her daughters sat directly inside that collision between ordinary family life plus underground criminal reality without fully understanding how deep everything actually reached around them. Some days looked completely normal around the household because Charmaine cooked food, handled family responsibilities, talked about concerts, plus spent time around Caribbean community events across Orlando. Other moments felt strange once unfamiliar men appeared briefly near the property, burner phones disappeared constantly, or late-night conversations shifted awkwardly whenever younger relatives entered certain rooms unexpectedly. Those contradictions became sharper after the robbery, since the daughters realized the attackers knew too much about the family's finances, routines, plus home layout for the invasion to feel completely random. Around the same period, Charmaine's obsession with Florida lottery scratch-off games started drawing more curiosity from investigators studying her financial patterns quietly. Between 2009 plus her eventual arrest years later, she repeatedly claimed substantial lottery winnings involving dozens of tickets generating unusually large amounts of money through legal channels. Inside Orlando's Jamaican circles, people started joking about Charmaine carrying impossible luck, while others suspected the winnings helped explain the sudden cash movement connected to trafficking proceeds. That pattern eventually connected investigators toward another important piece involving Las Vegas, where Charmaine reportedly deposited millions through Wynn casino visits between 2010 plus 2012, while maintaining the appearance of legitimate gambling activity. While younger street guys around Orlando attracted attention carrying marijuana physically through warehouses or stash locations, Charmaine learned how financial camouflage protected operations more effectively than intimidation alone. She blended lottery claims, nightclub promotion income, casino activity, plus business paperwork together carefully enough that outsiders often struggled separating legitimate earnings from trafficking profits immediately. Sure thing. Investments helped reinforce that image because entertainment promotion naturally involved heavy cash movement, artist payments, plus inconsistent bookkeeping practices across Caribbean nightlife culture. During those years, workers connected to the organization still moved marijuana through Pine Hills, Ocoee, Fairvilla Road, plus other Central Florida locations, while Charmaine focused increasingly on organizational systems instead of street-level movement. Meanwhile, the trafficking network itself kept expanding despite the Claremont robbery. Wayne St. Clair Reed continued strengthening transportation connections, while Mark Reed handled movement coordination involving warehouses, drivers, plus coded communications tied to shipments arriving from outside Florida. Couriers like Courtney Hutchinson still transported packages between locations, while figures such as Afri Chang maintained useful positions inside safe houses without attracting immediate suspicion publicly. By 2006, investigators from the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation had already started hearing scattered information about a Jamaican trafficking network moving unusually large marijuana shipments through Central Florida using warehouses, freight deliveries, plus trusted immigrant connections. Meanwhile, the trafficking operation itself kept expanding aggressively around Florida, while younger workers treated long-distance deliveries almost like regular employment rather than high-level trafficking activity. Courtney Hutchinson moved between stash houses, transporting packages, while Afri Chang reportedly coordinated safe locations where shipments could rest temporarily before redistribution around Central Florida. Wayne Reed strengthened supplier relationships stretching toward Texas plus Mexico, while Mark Reed handled communication logistics involving drivers, schedules, plus transportation routes crossing multiple states. Through all those moving pieces, Charmaine continued presenting herself publicly like a grandmother handling entertainment promotions connected to reggae culture around Orlando nightlife spaces. That image helped the organization heavily because officers rarely suspected the older woman organizing Caribbean events could also be coordinating money movement behind one of Central Florida's larger marijuana operations quietly. Everything shifted hard during July 2013 once investigators tracked a recreational vehicle carrying nearly 3,000 pounds of marijuana directly toward Orlando. Mukesh Rampersad, alongside Shamila Rampersad, drove the RV into Central Florida after agents spent time monitoring movement patterns tied to the vehicle during the transport run. Authorities eventually intercepted the RV around an Orlando area parking location before discovering hidden marijuana compartments packed beneath storage spaces, inside walls, plus underneath sleeping sections carefully modified for long-haul trafficking. The seizure shocked investigators because the quantity exposed how massive the operation had actually become, beyond ordinary street-level dealing around local neighborhoods. Mukesh plus Shamila claimed limited knowledge about the shipment initially, although agents believed experienced drivers transporting that amount understood far more than they admitted publicly afterward. That seizure immediately exposed a larger supply chain that investigators spent years trying to understand fully around Orlando's underground trafficking economy. Once authorities connected the RV shipment to existing surveillance involving warehouses, stash houses, plus burner phone activity, pressure started spreading quietly throughout the organization. Associates became nervous around deliveries, while some couriers reportedly stopped answering calls consistently after hearing rumors involving the bus tied to nearly 3,000 pounds getting seized. Warehouse movement near Fairvilla Road increased despite the pressure because people inside the network believed delaying shipments completely might attract even more suspicion from suppliers, demanding product movement continue normally. Investigators watched traffic patterns changing around industrial properties, while certain drivers suddenly avoided familiar routes previously used regularly throughout Orange County. Even with panic building underneath the surface, Charmaine Roman reportedly stayed unusually calm around people, expecting her operation to collapse after the RV seizure exposed major transportation methods publicly. That confidence partly came from surviving years without convictions, despite earlier marijuana links dating back to the late 1990s around Florida investigations. She also believed distance protected her because younger workers physically handled deliveries while she concentrated on communication systems, money coordination, plus organizational logistics connecting different sections together. Investigators later heard recordings where Charmaine warned associates about discussing details openly while reminding them phones could become dangerous if conversations stayed careless for too long. Those warnings revealed somebody thinking operationally instead of emotionally, which strengthened suspicions that she coordinated much more than ordinary financial paperwork behind the scenes. As surveillance tightened during summer 2013, younger couriers slowly became weak points, exposing more information unintentionally through mistakes, nervous behavior, plus inconsistent stories during interactions with investigators. Some workers changed phones too late after authorities already mapped communication patterns connecting stash houses, warehouses, plus transportation vehicles around Orlando. Others kept contacting familiar numbers repeatedly despite instructions to avoid predictable routines whenever deliveries moved through Central Florida corridors. Investigators noticed Charmaine's name appearing constantly around financial movement discussions involving deposits, transfers, plus distribution of money moving between different associates quietly after shipments arrived safely. That realization changed the direction of the investigation because agents increasingly viewed the grandmother figure not as background support, but as one of the central organizers controlling operational flow throughout the network. By September 2013, surveillance teams around Fairvilla Road had spent weeks monitoring warehouse activity tied to incoming freight shipments connected to the organization. Agents watched vehicles arriving briefly before leaving with suspicious cargo, while burner phones lit up immediately after deliveries reached warehouse locations. Informants warned that another major shipment would arrive soon, though investigators needed stronger timing before launching coordinated raids across Central Florida. Meanwhile, Charmaine Roman continued operating publicly through concerts, family gatherings, and ordinary community appearances while investigators quietly prepared to dismantle her network. Inside unmarked vehicles near Orlando warehouses, agents finalized plans for simultaneous raids targeting stash houses, transportation hubs, couriers, and people moving industrial-scale marijuana shipments through Florida almost invisibly. On September 30th, 2013, the investigation moved into takedown mode when Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation agents surrounded the Fairvilla Road warehouse after tracking another incoming marijuana shipment tied to Charmaine Roman's network. Detectives watched workers near the freight container as vehicles rotated through the industrial area. Agents knew it connected to a larger operation across Orange County. Once the delivery touched ground, tactical teams moved in while associates froze beside vehicles with phones, paperwork, and warehouse keys. Charmaine Roman stepped calmly from the black Land Rover, surprising investigators expecting panic after months of pressure. That arrest immediately triggered coordinated raids across Orlando, Pine Hills, Ocoee, and nearby areas where teams hit warehouses, homes, storage spaces, and transportation hubs connected to the trafficking network. Inside those locations, authorities recovered thousands of pounds of marijuana alongside cash, firearms, ledgers, ammunition, packaging materials, and vehicles connected to transportation routes mapped over years. Some stash houses looked almost ordinary from the outside, although agents found compressed marijuana hidden beside laundry supplies, furniture, plastic bins, and commercial storage equipment once warrants got executed. Fairvilla Road warehouses exposed records tied to deliveries, coded communications, route systems, and distribution activity moving product throughout Central Florida regularly. Wayne St. Clair Reed got arrested alongside Mark Reed, while younger workers realized the entire network had collapsed around them almost overnight. Several couriers started talking nervously after the raid since investigators possessed years of surveillance tying players to shipments through warehouses, RVs, and stash houses around Orange County. Then, investigators uncovered something stranger than marijuana shipments once searches inside Charmaine Roman's condo revealed multiple identities, passports, social security cards, birth certificates, and documents carrying different names connected to the same woman. One identity caught attention after paperwork linked Charmaine to Antoinette Lewis, raising confusion about aliases in the organization. Detectives found identification cards with different personal information, while photographs pointed back toward the same person operating publicly around Orlando's Jamaican entertainment circles for years. Larry Zweig admitted investigators were not fully certain about some suspects' real names despite nearly 7 years of surveillance. That revelation shocked people because authorities realized the grandmother, promoting concerts, had spent years building layers of personal camouflage alongside trafficking infrastructure. Those discoveries strengthened prosecutors who framed the case through RICO charges instead of isolated arrests. Prosecutors argued the organization functioned like a structured criminal enterprise involving transportation systems, financial coordination, stash houses, couriers, and coded communication networks working continuously across state lines. Wayne Reed handled supplier relationships, while Mark Reed focused on logistics. Although prosecutors described Charmaine Roman as the figure keeping money movement, organization, and communication flowing between sections. That framing mattered because investigators believe she rarely touched marijuana directly while controlling enormous sections through financial systems, planning, and trusted relationships. Authorities connected earlier clues involving lottery winnings, casino deposits, concert promotion income, fake identities, and unexplained wealth patterns tracked long before the raids. During court appearances, Charmaine Roman presented herself as a concert promoter connected to Orlando's reggae scene rather than a trafficking organizer. She claimed Sure Thing Investments handled the entertainment business while attorneys emphasized her family role, immigration background, and involvement in Caribbean community events. Prosecutors dismantled that image with evidence of fake identities, suspicious financial activity, casino deposits, warehouses, burner phones, and transportation routes. Authorities highlighted repeated lottery winnings and millions moving through Wynn casino accounts when her declared income looked smaller. When Circuit Judge Tim Shea reviewed the evidence, prosecutors argued multiple passports made her a flight risk. Shea responded bluntly that ordinary people do not carry multiple names unless hiding something serious. Outside courtrooms, media coverage exploded once reporters described a grandmother from Dr. Phillips as one of Central Florida's major marijuana traffickers. Headlines focused on the contrast between Charmaine's quiet public image versus allegations involving warehouses, cash laundering, fake passports, and thousands of pounds of marijuana moving through Orlando corridors. Television stations replayed raid footage while newspapers highlighted the grandmother angle because audiences struggled imagining her coordinating large trafficking systems. Comparisons surfaced to women like Griselda Blanco or Sandra Avila Beltran, though investigators used those names to explain how female traffickers operated differently from louder male counterparts, attracting violence and attention. Charmaine never built a reputation through public brutality or flashy intimidation because her value came from organization, financial movement, and ability to blend naturally into ordinary community life. People connected to the organization faced different realities once arrests spread across Central Florida in late 2013. Couriers like Courtney Hutchinson confronted charges carrying major prison exposure, while figures such as Afri Chang faced pressure seeking cooperation about stash houses, warehouse activity, and transportation systems. Mukesh and Shamila Rampersad remained connected after the RV seizure exposed the pipeline's scale. Younger workers who viewed deliveries as ordinary hustle money realized investigators had tracked routes, burner phones, warehouse traffic, and coded conversations for years. By the raid's end, authorities believed they dismantled one of the region's larger structures, though the most unsettling detail was how Charmaine hid in plain sight, looking like somebody's favorite grandmother. After raids tore through warehouses, stash houses, and homes, connected people faced pressure from every direction. Federal investigators separated workers to determine roles and who might cooperate first as prison time became real. Afri Chang became important as she understood safe houses after balancing ordinary employment with hidden responsibilities. She gave details on coded calls, stash locations, transportation routines, and product rotation through Pine Hills corridors. Her situation reflected the organization because many pulled in were immigrants escaping low wages to support relatives across Caribbean communities rather than hardened criminals. Younger couriers panicked once charges carried sentences destroying futures before middle age. Courtney Hutchinson had moved packages confidently, but lost confidence after links to larger systems with thousands of pounds. Drivers claimed temporary involvement for rent, family expenses, immigration problems, and medical bills overseas. Mukesh and Shamila Rampersad exemplified complicated reality with legitimate backgrounds before the RV arrest with nearly 3,000 pounds. Investigators believed they understood more, though supporters argued immigrants got trapped after legitimate work stopped paying enough. Those arguments surfaced because everybody carried explanations involving family pressure, financial desperation, or quick money promises without violence. Charmaine Roman's daughters faced emotional collapse, balancing family memories with suspicions about their mother's hidden life. They carried trauma from the 2009 Claremont home invasion, where armed men tied the family over lottery money. That became harder once trafficking allegedly shaped the family world. One reality showed grandmother cooking, attending events, and discussing concerts, while another involved burners, warehouses, hidden cash, and robbers. That contradiction followed them as they loved their mother, yet realized dangers likely tied to the operation. Neighbors and Dr. Phillips struggled processing news, remembering Charmaine as friendly in gatherings, concerts, and events rather than tied to trafficking. The neighborhood contrasted with Pine Hills Dance Hall, stash houses, roots, and nightlife. Charmaine moved between worlds without suspicion by adapting how she spoke, dressed, and behaved. She hosted gatherings before shipment talks the same night. Wayne St. Clair Reed and Mark Reed remained central as investigators viewed the operation as loyalty-based through immigrant relationships rather than rigid gangs. That structure made investigations difficult, with shared ties predating marijuana money. Law enforcement described it as evolving Caribbean infrastructure, sentencing scattered people across prisons and immigration systems. Reed and Reed received years. Couriers took pleas. Rumors about Charmaine's fate grew her story into folklore. BET's show later adapted it, highlighting contrasts and female power in crime. Her dual identities fascinated people long after, reflecting immigrants' realities. The calm at the warehouse explained survival through ordinary appearances.